Welcome to the Sportsman's Voice Roundup, your weekly look at conservation and sporting community news happening across the nation and on the Hill. Thanks for tuning in. This is the TSV Roundup. Welcome in, ladies and gentlemen, to another edition of the Sportsman's Voice Roundup for the week of June 24th, 2024. This week, we take you to the Hill. Our lead story: House CSC members introduce ACE Reauthorization Act, a significant CSF priority. We're joined by Taylor Schmitz momentarily. We go down to Kentucky, where we are recapping a successful legislative session. An air rifle field trip impresses in New Hampshire. Expanded opportunity for mountain lions in Nebraska. And finally, the Nevada Sportsmen's Caucus gathers for an inaugural fly fishing retreat and educational event. All that and more, but first, let's turn to our Director of Federal Policy, Taylor Schmitz. Taylor, welcome into the show. Some good news on the Hill where, quite frankly, not a lot getting done.
Yeah, thanks, Fred. Good to be with you. As you mentioned, last week, Congressman Rob Whitman, former leader of the Congressional Sportsmen's Caucus, along with Congresswoman Jen Kiggins, Congresswoman Debbie Dingell, and Congressman Mike Thompson, introduced the House Companion of America's Conservation Enhancement Reauthorization Act. And this bill is a top priority for us at CSF, as you mentioned. And CSF actually had a heavy hand in this bill since it was kind of first envisioned, dating back to really 2017-18, and it's evolved from there. And the bill, as we know it today, was signed into law in 2020, and I'm really excited to see the House moving on this piece of legislation.
So this act does a few things. Can you highlight some of those big ticket items and why, the sporting community needs to be involved and care?
Yeah, happy to, Fred. So as you mentioned, the bill does a number of things. There's about a dozen provisions or so in the bill. There's a few in particular that we at CSF are really excited about, and those have been longstanding priorities for us. One of those most notable ones is the bill will reauthorize the North American Wetlands Conservation Act, which is the nation's leading wetlands conservation program across the country. And what NAWCA for short, seeks to do is it leverages public-private partnerships to deliver money on the ground for various wetlands conservation programs. And I mentioned that it is one of the most successful programs in the country for wetlands conservation. And just to highlight some of that, NAWCA's provided over $2.1 billion in federal grants that's been leveraged by nearly $4.3 billion in non-federal contributions. And that's really significant when you look at this, because NAWCA requires a one-to-one match. But because of the value of this program, people are leveraging this at a rate of really 3-to-1. And that's pretty significant. And just in terms of what that means for on-the-ground projects, there have been over 3,300 projects that have conserved and restored nearly 32 million acres of wetlands in the United States, Mexico, and Canada. And one of the questions we always get is why is Mexico and Canada based in this? Well, as you know, and as any waterfowl hunter knows, these birds are migrating up and down North America. So it's critically important that our partners up in Canada have solid and healthy wetlands for breeding seasons, and summering waterfowl stop over in the United States, and wintering waterfowl in the United States, and then flying down, for some species, continuing their migration all the way down to Mexico. So it's important that we have good habitat, starting out in Canada, going through the United States and Mexico. Another provision that we're excited about is reauthorizing the National Fish Habitat Conservation through partnerships. And this program is very similar to NAWCA in terms of functionality and how it works, but it's really focused on fisheries habitat. This dates back to really kind of 2001, and really seeks, again, to leverage those public-private partnerships and set up these various partnerships across the country, ranging from Eastern Brook Trout Joint Venture to some marine habitat conservation in Washington State and the Gulf of Mexico. But really the goal there is to get local communities bought into their fisheries habitat conservation needs, and to get money on the ground in their communities. And I can actually speak to this from a personal perspective. A couple years ago, I was driving out in one of my favorite trout streams that will remain nameless because I don't need to see any guests there. But they were conducting a stream culvert project, and they were replacing this degraded culvert, and they did a really fantastic job on that. And I stopped by and asked some of the folks there if they were working on a NIFHAP project, and they had no idea what I was talking about, but come to find out that it actually was funded with NIFHAP dollars. And so really excited to get this one included in the bill. Also, CSF's Senior Director of Fisheries Policy, Chris Horton, is a member of the NIFHAP board. So not only is CSF really helping drive this legislation through the process, but we're also working to help get the money on the ground and identify those really good projects that make sense for this money to go to. And then one of the other big ones that we're excited about is there's a 5-year protection to prohibit the EPA from regulating the use of lead fishing tackle under the purview of a federal program known as the Toxic Substances Control Act. And this has been a longstanding fight for us. The EPA has consistently been petitioned by a number of environmental organizations that have tried to get them to regulate the use of lead tackle. And thankfully, the EPA has recognized that this is completely outside of their purview. They don't have the authority to regulate lead tackle under TSCA, and we're thankful for that. And this legislation, or this provision in the ACE Reauthorization Act, just codifies that into law for a period of 5 years that the EPA cannot regulate the use of lead tackle. So those are 3 programs. There's a number of other ones like the Chesapeake Bay program, and a few more that we're really happy about to see in there, but those are the 3 big ones for CSF.
Well, that's great. So next steps in the process so that folks understand how this works.
Early May, the Senate passed the ACE Reauthorization Act under unanimous consent, which is really encouraging to see. As you routinely talk about on the podcast, Fred, our issues related to conservation access continue to remain that tremendous area of bipartisan support. And so the Senate did clear their bill earlier this year. Obviously, you need, in most cases, unless the House is just going to take up a bill from the Senate, which doesn't happen very often in today's Congress, you need a House companion bill. So that's what this bill is that we're talking about. The next steps in the process are really to go through the committee process, have a hearing on the bill, get the facts of why this is important, and you'll go to a markup for an opportunity to vote on this piece of legislation. Then from there, it'll go to the floor. So where we're at CSF right now is we're just trying to drum up support on the House bill, try to get some bipartisan co-sponsors on there, and really communicate to Congress why this piece of legislation is critically important at this time.
What can everyday folks do? Should they be calling their congressional representative and then getting in touch with them? Should they be contacting committee members only and saying, hey, this matters to me? You know, especially in an election year where we've been really beating the drum with the sporting community at your local level to be involved. Here's another opportunity, I think, for people to be involved and hopefully move the needle.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I think right now it would be best for sportsmen and women to contact their legislators in both the House and Senate and let them know that this is a big priority for them as sportsmen and women, as conservationists. We are just trying to get as much bipartisan support on this bill as we can. And there's a common theme known in DC known as the Noah's Ark approach, where you add a Republican and a Democrat at the same time to keep things bipartisan. And that's what we're trying to do here is that because conservation truly is bipartisan and it doesn't recognize those political lines. So anything that folks can do to let their members of Congress and elected officials know that this is a top priority for them as sportsmen and women would be greatly appreciated.
For sure. And it seems like it would be common sense. That's, obviously very rose-colored glasses to say, but it's low-hanging fruit for those folks down there, especially for the sporting community that does engage. And if you want to maybe secure up some votes and take care of the sportsmen and women of this great country, here's your opportunity to nudge them politely and then also for them to act in kind. So good deal. While we have you for a couple minutes, is there any other policy, any other work happening on the Hill or anything that you're dealing with that you'd like to highlight and let the folks know about?
Yeah, sure. Happy to, Fred. One of the big things continues to be the North Atlantic right whale issue, as you're very well aware of, and you've talked about it numerous times on this podcast. And we're thankful that Congressman Buddy Carter and Congresswoman Mary Peltola recently introduced a bipartisan bill to help address this issue and make sure that no draconian measures are taken to undermine recreational fishing in coastal communities in the Atlantic. So we're working on that, working on a couple other things. One of the big ones that we're really excited about is an effort to provide funding to conserve big game migration corridors. And
Wherever.
right now, Congressman Ryan Sankey and Congressman Don Beyer in the House, and then Senator Alex Padilla are working on a piece of legislation that would address this. In 2018, the Department of Interior issued a secretarial order to conserve big game migration corridors, and that was really an innovative step forward, and the first time that the federal government has really looked at migration corridors and said these are really important areas. We need to be doing everything we can to conserve these areas. And so this bill that I mentioned just provides funding to make that secretarial order a reality and continue to deliver on the ground conservation benefits for migratory wildlife. So excited about that. And obviously there's a whole host of other things, but those are a couple of the things that are coming top of mind this week.
The migration corridors legislation is super exciting to me. I don't know, maybe I just nerd out, but there's so many benefits, obviously, to the wildlife first and foremost, motorists secondly, and then some people may not think about it right away, but the entire insurance industry has got to be head over heels for that, and probably supporting that in a few different ways. And if they're not, I'll probably ought to get behind that and help move that along for whatever their voice is worth. And I think it's a lot.
Yeah, that's exactly right. It's no secret that there's a lot of dead critters on the side of the road, and that's obviously very sad for us as sportsmen and women. Very sad for wildlife, but also to your point for businesses, right? Whether it is the insurance company or your general automotive driver, right? That's a significant issue. Nobody wants to hit a deer or God help you if you hit a moose or something like that. It's a big issue. So certainly, the corridors and crossings piece is something that we're extremely excited about at CSF. And again, there's been a lot of technology that's come to light over the last decade or so. We just know a lot more about migratory wildlife in terms of, deer, elk, moose, pronghorn, et cetera, than we did in the past. And this legislation recognizes that. And I think that it is, to your point, extremely exciting moment for our community, that we are finally getting our arms around one of the biggest conservation challenges facing wildlife.
And I think another part of that too, for the folks that are maybe learning about this for the first time, or what it is that, often so much infrastructure takes away from the local habitat. It fragments forests, fragments corridors of migration. And this actually, a lot of these add to the landscape and return some habitat, especially some of the overpasses out west where native grasses and plants can take hold and just act as a natural green bridge. And I mean, that's really great. It adds to the aesthetics of the landscape and really tries to keep that natural corridor in there and not so much concrete and tar going down. So it's for me anyway, I think it's a fantastic.
Yep, it is. It is truly exciting. So
Awesome. Well, Taylor, thanks so much. I know you're busy down there in a very busy calendar year. So thanks for carving out the time, giving us an update. And again, folks, get involved. Here's your opportunity. Call your legislator, ask them to advance this version of ACE, and do your part. Thanks, Taylor.
awesome. Thank you, Fred.
All right. Thanks again to Taylor for coming on and giving us a breakdown of that bit of news there. Obviously, good news on the ACA, and obviously, I'm a little nerdy when it comes to the overpasses and the highway mitigation there, and allowing for travel routes for the wild critters. So that's good work. It's good stuff. So it's something that's easy to be excited about. All right, let's get to the rest of the headlines. Let's start down in Kentucky. Busy in the Bluegrass State, recapping a successful legislative session in Kentucky from Connor Barker. Let's hit the highlights. Some of these we've covered. Some of them will be new news. Senate Bill 3, which we did cover in depth, would have administratively attached Kentucky Department of Fish and Wildlife Resource to the Department of Agriculture, and would have authorized the Commissioner of Ag to appoint members of the Kentucky Fish and Wildlife Commission. That was defeated. Senate Bill 60 would have allowed residents and non-residents to obtain a hunting license or permit without taking hunter safety education course. And House Bill 357, sponsored by over a dozen caucus members, successfully prohibited payment card networks from requiring or incentivizing the use of merchant category code that distinguishes a firearm retailer from other retailers. Many of those, 2 out of the 3 we've definitely covered in depth in the past. Good wins. One being a negative, the latter being a positive. Seems, at least to my knowledge, we had more proactive piece of legislation across the country as it concerned the merchant category coding to protect privacy, protect consumers. So that's good. There are obviously the ones out there that are trying to go 180 degrees the other way. See last week's coverage of the New York bill. Let's go into Senate Bill 60 because this is new information to me. It was a misguided bill that would have allowed residents and non-residents to obtain a hunting license or permit without first taking hunter safety courses. Currently, in all 50 states, there is a requirement for hunter safety. Many states, Kentucky included, even require hunter education range day, where hunters can showcase their firearm safety skills and learn how to safely handle a firearm before heading field. CSF submitted comments opposing Senate Bill 60 and worked with the caucus to ensure that the legislation did not advance. Kentucky hunters will still be required to take hunter safety, safeguarding Kentuckians' ability to safely enjoy our time-honored traditions. That's weird. I wouldn't even speculate what the streak was. That's just an odd one, and as Connor stated, misguided. Certainly we want people going to field with some level of education, and I dare say a lot of this is basic hunter ed, right? So there's always more learning to go on. Many of these states give you enough to be safe. Certainly there is some self-education afterwards. Some states, like where I live, you used to have you had your basic hunter ed safety, you had archery safety, and there's a trapper's ed course specifically. Some years back, they decided to combine basic hunter ed with archery education, presumably to streamline that, and as far as scheduling and combining that curriculum, probably out of a lack of hunter ed instructors, and a lot of ours are volunteer instructors, if not all of them. So anyway, there's obviously some level as cited here in all 50 states. It's not a bad thing. But yeah, good news out of Kentucky. Moving on. Up in my neck of the woods, New Hampshire, our executive council, our NAS executive council president, Representative Jeff Goley, caucus co-chair here in New Hampshire, other caucus members, leadership from the New Hampshire Fish and Game commissioners, and members of the New Hampshire House Fish and Game and Marine Committee were all on hand at 6 Hour, the experience center there. They went to the range and got a little fanfare with different air rifle platforms, the PCPs there, the pneumatics, shot at ballistic jelly, shot at paper targets at different distances to see the effectiveness and the efficacy, ethical means of take with the ballistic jelly there. Sounds like it was a good day overall. We had a bill this last session that we covered. We being I went and testified in favor of it. It was House Bill 1042 that would have created expanded access for use of air rifles in the state. Ultimately, it was committed to a further study, hence the field day here. And, one of the recommendations, won't call it criticism because there's definitely some education to be had here, is it's all good. We love improving or including extra access for folks. Certainly air rifles with their capabilities and the technology over the last decade and a half, if they've come on up to 2024, certainly definitely able to take large game and do so efficiently and ethically. But there's no conservation funding in there. So if somebody or a population of people were to go strictly to an air rifle platform to hunt, unlike manufacturer level excise tax through Pittman and Robinson on your firearms, your ammo, this would skirt that. So what we recommend is a couple different options, but probably the most approved, I don't want to say approved, just one that makes the most sense and probably easiest to employ is a one-time air rifle stamp that would suffice that funding and not miss out on the funding for the states. I think that's reasonable and, should be an easy sell. And hopefully in this next session here in New Hampshire, get that bill rewritten with the correct language to cover the conservation funding and get that over the finish line and on to the governor's desk, whoever that may be next year. So as I understand it, many people were impressed by the abilities of these platforms. A lot of folks, especially on the commission, that had concerns with the hands-on definitely had their minds changed and feel better about it. So certainly at the agency level, it sounds like there's buy-in. And like I said, we just get that funding mechanism covered and should have a good win in New Hampshire next year and expand that access. Speaking of expanded access, Jake Goulds brings us this from Nebraska. Commissioners are considering expanding mountain lion hunting opportunities. Yeah, another one of these heads or tails, right? I mean, we covered Colorado where they're trying to do away with it. Here in Nebraska, let's expand the access. Let's read more. In August of 2023, Nebraska Game and Parks Commission expanded hunting opportunities for mountain lions by establishing the new, I'm going to try my best here, Niobrara unit. My apologies to Nebraskans if I got that wrong. Commissioners are again looking to create more opportunities for hunters to hit the fields and attempt to harvest a mountain lion by potentially expanding into the Wildcat Hills unit. CSF supports science-based management decisions for sustainable harvest and increased hunting opportunities. So last week, the NGPC considered amendments to the state's wildlife regulations, which would establish a mountain lion season by creating the Wildcat Hills unit. The establishment of the Wildcat Hills unit would be the third mountain lion hunting unit, joining the Pine Ridge and the Niobrara units. Again, while states are trying to reduce or completely eliminate hunting opportunities for mountain lions, including past legislative attempts from Nebraska legislators, the Nebraska Game and Parks Commission are again trying to expand, as we said. Little insight here. The commissioners during their June 21st meeting considered amendments to Title 164, Chapter 4 of the state wildlife regulations, which would expand mountain lion hunting opportunities beginning in 2025. Wildcat Hills unit would join the Pine Ridge and the one I keep butchering as the only other mountain lion hunting available in Nebraska. If approved, the proposed unit would allow for the harvest of mountain lions within a sublimit of 2 females. Also considered during the meeting was an increase of the total harvest number for the Pine Ridge and the Niobrara units. If approved, Pine Ridge would see a harvest increase from 4 to 12, the sublimit of 6 females, while the Niobrara unit would see a harvest increase from 2 to 4 with a sublimit of 2 females. Good deal. CSF supports that. And, sound wildlife management coming on the recommendation of the agency and those agency professionals. Gotta love expanded access and seeing management on the ground, increasing numbers, even if it is predators, means it's working. And that creates plenty of opportunity. And for those naysayers that just want to slap a trophy label on it, whatever trophy actually means. They tend to not be able to define that. There's plenty of utilization from that mountain lion. There's many great recipes for fine table fare for mountain lions and the multiple uses of that animal that is responsibly and highly managed take from the land. So spare me your thoughts of, again, that Airfinger quote trophy hunting, because no one can really define it, and it just seems to be applicable by emotion and people that apply aesthetic value to certain critters. So there you go. Good job, Nebraska. Hopefully that gets done, and they are able to use hunters as part of that management. Let's head over to Nevada. Barry Snell killing it this last quarter here on events in the West. It's very exciting to see. Nevada Sportsmen's Caucus gathers for an inaugural fly fishing retreat and educational event. Let's read more on this. Approximately 35 sportsmen and women gathered near Yerington, Nevada on June 18th to fly fish with members of the Nevada Legislative Sportsmen's Caucus. Numerous members and game commissioners were present, along with staff from the Nevada Department of Wildlife, Nevada State Parks, and several of the CSF in-state partners. Presentations were given by retired NDOW biologist Mike Sevon and Carly with the Walker Basin Conservancy about efforts to raise the water levels in Walker Lake to restore the once thriving fish populations there. The day began on a freshly stocked pond on the ranch where newbies to fly fishing received instructions from the rangers and other staff. From there, the folks were cut loose to continue fishing on the pond or explore the Walker River nearby. Senator Robin Titus, one of the caucus co-chairs, provided an award of 2 bottles of local wine to the winner of the impromptu largest fish competition. Following their lunch, Mike Seaman, a retired fisheries biologist, gave a presentation entitled The Fisheries History of Walker Lake, Past, Present, and Future. The presentation detailed how Walker Lake, once home to thriving populations of several species of fish and a significant source of food and recreation, has since turned into a virtual lifeless body of water. Stark change has been caused by declining water levels, which has in turn caused a dramatic increase in the total dissolved solids concentration, which has now reached toxic levels. Carrie Heineman with the Walker Basin Conservancy followed that up with a presentation on how they, the agency, and other in-state partners have been working to reverse the situation and restore Walker Lake to the fish and recreation haven that it once was. This event was intentionally held on the Flying M Ranch because of the acquisition of the land once owned by Baron Hilton as part of the effort by the state of Nevada to acquire as much of the water rights as possible in the Walker River Basin to most effectively combat the problem. The event closed with a roundtable discussion of how we could continue to work together, not only for the Walker Lake issue, but on other issues pertaining to Nevada sportsmen and women, including discussing concerns over the anticipated attempts by anti-hunting activists to change the composition of the Game Commission in the upcoming legislative session to include some of those same anti-hunting activists. A serious situation that CSF will continue to work with the caucus and our partners to oppose. Cool. Thanks, Barry. That sounds like a good event. And kind of hate to see it end on a sour note, but alas, we're prepared, certainly engaged on those attempts to infiltrate boards and commissions. And we're prepared to do that. And we got the infrastructure in place with our NAS network and our in-state legislative caucuses to stand up to that. And as always, it requires buy-in from the public and those local sportsmen and women communities. Call them, write them, email them, knock on their public office doors, set an appointment, go have a conversation. You guys can drive and steer the ship on this. You just got to get involved. That's it. That's the headlines for the week of June 24th, 2024. Thanks for having us along. And we will see you next Wednesday. No feature presentation this week. I invite you to go back to or download our latest episode with Knox William and Brandon Maddox. We're talking silencers, a couple different perspectives on the topic, and really interesting. If you ever want to know more about silencers, the technology, how it's employed for hunting, tune into that one. Again, no feature presentation this week. Next week, we're back with another feature. As always, we appreciate you downloading. We appreciate you tuning in, sharing this stuff far and wide, and increasing our listenership and our audience participation. Have a great rest of your week. We'll see you next Wednesday. So long. Oh, and as always, CSF is your inside connection to outdoor legislation. Now, so long. Thanks for joining us on this edition of the Sportsman's Voice podcast. Ladies and gentlemen, your support is crucial, and you can help us out right now by leaving a review, filling in those 5 stars where available, sharing this episode with friends and family, and engaging with us socially. CSF can be found on Facebook, Instagram, and X, formerly known as Twitter. Together, we can protect the outdoor sports we love and continue to keep you informed wherever you are. That's it for this week. Until next time, we'll see you later.